Is the belief in a fair go is embedded in Australian society, yet gender inequality continues to be a problem and it's holding the economy back. So, what can be done about this ongoing inequality, and why should Australia as a nation care? So, if you like this intro, this is a blurb from the book Advance Australia Fairly. So welcome to another episode of 30 Minutes with DailyStraits.com. This is your host, June Ramli. So when it comes to gender equality in Australia, one person has heaps of knowledge to say about this topic, and that one person is Dr. Kathryn Evans. So Kathryn has really recently penned a book called Advance Australia Fairly, and why there is a need for Australia to have a national plan for gender equality to drive the nation's success. So Dr. Kathryn is the Australian Managing Director of a multinational biotechnology company. She's a qualified pharmacist who made her mark as a top salesperson for companies such as Roche, Cochlear and Sanofi before going to earn her MBA in business administration in 2019. And for her influential research on women in senior leadership. So, and in 2020, her research findings were published in the Asian Pacific Journal of Human Resources. So, our chat with Dr. Kathryn today is going to be revolved about her book and also how Australian businesses can do better by inculcating more women in the top management positions. So, there's also a big surprise at the end of the podcast, so please tune in till the end. So hi, Dr. Kathryn. Thank you so much for coming to the show and joining us today. How are you?
Hello, June. Thank you so much for having me. I'm great. Thank you. This is a fabulous topic to be discussing today.
Yes, so let's dive right into the question. So can you just tell us, it's a really a big topic and a hard one to tackle. So what was why did you pen the book in the first place?
Oh, goodness. I think like many women, I've faced challenges throughout my career, and I have two teenage daughters. And I really want to hope that they have every opportunity that could be available to them. I think that was the optimistic view that I had when I was at school. My parents taught me and my sister and brother that we could be anything we wanted as long as we worked hard and got good education, and that's all that mattered. And in fact, I think my experience and many other people around the world find that that's not quite the case. So I really want to be an agent for change, and I believe that it's not just the right thing to do. From a moral perspective, we all deserve equal opportunity in life, but it's also really good for the nation. There are huge economic benefits for organizations, businesses, and for us as a country.
Awesome. So how long have you been researching on the topic? And what were some of the challenges you faced in putting the book together?
I have been researching almost 10 years now, and first of all, it was aiming to do PhD research, and then on from that, I wanted to publish, and I think the book is really enabling that academic research to become accessible, to be very much in plain language and understandable by the business community and by politicians who are making the important decisions in our nation. So I think the biggest challenge that I faced really would be the reaction that I get, because this is a very complex issue, and we really, especially in Australia, we want to believe that we are fair, that we make decisions based on merit alone. We hear this a lot, and everybody wants to believe that they make decisions in the best interests of their business, of the sphere of influence that they have. But, it's just a natural part of the human psyche that we prefer people who are like us. And so unconsciously, we make decisions that are coloured with that bias. It's not intentional. We all believe that we're doing the right thing, but it just happens. And it can have a profound impact. And what I found was, when I discussed with people the research that I was doing, everybody has a reason. They have a rationale. They explain to themselves when it comes to women and why we don't see enough women at the leadership level is, oh, it's because they're off having babies. Oh, it's because they just need more time to get educated, to get the right experience. So everybody has come up with their own rationale. And in fact, what my research shows is that those things are simply not true. They're myths.
So what about the writing? Because you're working full time and you have a family, and how did you like find the time to write?
Yeah, it's a juggling act, but I think when you really believe in something and you really want to commit to it. So yes, I've got to really thank my husband, because he wrangled the children out of the way on many occasions when I needed to just sit down and get it done. Like so many of the very senior women that I interviewed as part of my research, having a supportive partner certainly makes a big difference. But I think it's not just up to the individual families, it's up to us to think about the systems in our businesses, in our society that need to support women better in order to give them those chances to reach the very tops of our organisations.
Awesome. So okay, so you yourself are a person in high standing in a multinational company. So can you tell us about your experience? How hard was it for you to climb the corporate ladder?
Look, I think that like many women, I've faced challenges along the way, but I am extremely determined and I don't give up. And if I reflect on my history and part of what makes me want to do this research, I recall when I was a child that my beloved grandfather was working as a courier and was allowed to take one of the grandchildren out on the rounds in his truck. And my brother, the youngest brother, ended up going, not me as the eldest child. I was just devastated, and it was purely because I was a girl. And then early on in my career as a pharmacist, I spent a day unpaid work experience for a pharmacy that had asked me to come in, only to be told at the end of the day, look, you're obviously a very professional pharmacist, the staff all liked you, you got on well with the customers, I had great feedback, but don't quote me on this, I've decided I want a man. So then I think to my more recent career, and I'm very persistent, I don't let those things stop me. I was a Me Too statistic with a very senior a CEO whose attention turned personal. Shake that off. But even now, in my role as a managing director, often the feedback that I get is, Kathryn, your communication style is perceived as too aggressive. And that agency and confidence that is much celebrated in male leaders is not perceived the same way for women. And we see in research that women get feedback about their aggressive, abrasive communication styles 75% of the time, compared to only 2% of men. And men get feedback that is helpful to their job performance, not about their communication style. So we have a double standard when it comes to the way that we perceive our employees in the workforce, especially our leaders.
Okay, that's great. So in most offices, we are barred from discussing our salaries with our co-workers in the open, but generally men do get paid more because of the traditional concept that they are the breadwinners of a family and hence they need more pay. So with all this in mind, how do you propose that we close the gender pay gap among men and women in Australia?
That's so true, June. I think what we see in the public service, where salaries are very transparent, that there is far less of a gap, and certainly in some industries such as financial services, where there is a large proportion of the remuneration that is commission or it's discretionary, that we see a much greater gap, and it is very secret, and women don't know what to ask for. They don't know what the gap is, and we see it even from the very earliest time of graduation, that there is a gap that grows over the course of a woman's career. from just under 10% at the time of graduation to close to 30% when women reach senior levels. And I think it is there's a couple of things. One, of course, is individual organisations really need to do the audits, do the analysis, and it is within the control of the leaders in the organisations to fix it. So that's the simple answer. But I think also we have legislation in Australia that requires employers with employees of more than 100 to report annually their gender statistics to the government, and they do so, but there's no penalties, there's no consequences. There's essentially what I hear from the women that I interview is that the legislation lacks teeth. Okay. So it's really up to the individual organisation. If they have a will, great. If they don't have a will, then nothing changes.
Okay, so COVID has brought about a raft of changes in the way we work. As you know, one of them is work from home, or the hybrid concept, like few days in the office, 2 days at home. So this has been great for women who can juggle home duties and work itself. So, but some people are saying that if you continue doing this, then you probably be passed on for promotions. So it's like a threat, you see. So can you tell us your take on this? Like, why do they say all this stuff?
And let's not forget that it's good for men too. There are men who want to spend more time with their families, who want to be able to balance their work life with other things that are important to them. So I think if there's anything good to come out of COVID, it definitely is that propensity for more flexibility and more recognition of the whole person, not just their ideal worker status, because there has been that traditional view that the ideal worker is available 24/7, comes in early, doesn't leave until the boss has gone home. And certainly there have been penalties for women who have worked part-time, for women who want flexible arrangements, and it comes back to the confirmation bias. If a woman is off having a business meeting, it'll be assumed that they're picking up their kids. If they perform really well, it's assumed that it was just good luck. Whereas if something goes wrong, well, it was their fault. So there definitely is a level of bias in the way that we look at it. But I do think there's a great opportunity for both men and women with the flexible arrangements to be able to balance all of that and hopefully level the playing field. And I think it's important that male leaders and female leaders take the opportunity to do that, to set the norm, so that people can see from the very top that is okay and that is acceptable, and that people can still perform well, be promoted, be developed, even when they're working in a flexible style. So I feel quite hopeful about the opportunities for that in the future.
Awesome. So how do Australian businesses support more women to participate fully in our labour market?
Look, I think that's a really important one, given the skills shortage that we're facing in Australia right now. And it was recognised at the recent Labor Government Jobs and Skills Summit. We as a country invest a huge amount in women's education and have done for decades. And Australia leads the world in female education. But we're just not reaping the rewards of that investment, because we actually have the third lowest rate of female full-time employment in the OECD. So women are not remaining engaged and connected to the workforce as much as other countries. And if we were to raise our rates of female full-time employment to that of Sweden, PwC has calculated that would add another $175 billion to our economy. So there's a huge economic gain to be made. And this is one of the arguments that I make for the need for a national plan to address this. So how do we do that? How do we keep women engaged in the workforce? Well, there's a bunch of toolkits that are available on Human Rights website, on the Women's Gender Equality Agency website, but essentially things like ensuring there is good child care support. We don't want women saying, well, I could work another 1 or 2 days a week, but I'm going to lose it all in childcare. It's just not worth it. How do we address that, through government support, or things like allowing childcare to be tax deducted, like other things that support people in the workforce can be? Because we know that women still in our society carry the bulk of the load at home with childcare and domestic duties. It's just a fact of life in our society. And ensuring that women still have those opportunities even when they are in those short periods of disruption through the child rearing years, to remain connected. So connecting them in to important meetings and allowing them to be connected to their teams, even perhaps when they're off, if they so choose, and enabling them to have promotions and to advance their careers even throughout that period. Paying them superannuation, having incentives to come back to the workforce full time. And look, a lot of it ends up being what they call benevolent sexism, which is really, it's the frontline managers who say, oh, well, she wouldn't be interested in that promotion because she's just had a young baby. With, making assumptions which are not necessarily true. And I've talked to women who, many years down the track, even long after their children have grown or are no longer in that high needs situation, still working part-time, still their careers have not gone anywhere, and they say, you know what, if I'd made a different decision, I really feel that I could have advanced more, and I just haven't had the opportunities that I have. So it's really twofold, and like I say, the frontline managers actually have a really big role to play here.
Okay, so your book touches about public listed companies, AXX companies having very little women in top posts, these top management posts. Most importantly, I would like to ask, there's also a bigger barrier when it comes to Australian women of color into such position. So do you have a remedy on how we can fix that?
Yes, look, that's right. The issue is even more so for women of color. I get asked a lot about the discrimination against minorities and what we can do to address that as well. And I think about the perspective that Ahmed Fahour, who's a Muslim Lebanese Australian, used to head up Australia Post. When he came into that role, there were 0 women on the senior executive team, and 3 to 4 years later, he had met the goal of 40%, which is gender balanced. And he said, if we can't get something as plainly obvious as gender right, then what hope do the rest of us have? What hope does anyone who is slightly different? What does it mean for our Indigenous people, our minorities? And so I think that focusing on women who make up 50% of the population, roughly 50% of the workforce, if you can get that right, a lot of the rest will follow. But I do agree that there is a particular challenge for women of colour, and it certainly is something that we need to consider, because our senior ranks ought to reflect our workforce. They ought to reflect the population, the educated women and men who are coming through, instead of what we have at the moment, which is a group of white, male, 50-something, able-bodied heterosexuals who really only make up 8% of our population, and yet they make up more than 90% of the CEOs of ASX companies. So we've got to start with getting that balance right.
Awesome. So in Asia, which is not too far from here, so a lot of women taking up leadership positions. So, but they are always faced with a lot of flack from the public.
Mm.
So, like if you like they get keep being told that if you continue doing well in work, then you're going to find it hard to find an equal partner in life. So these threats can often slow things down for a woman that has goals in her career. So, so what do you have to say about that?
Yes, it's women shouldn't have to choose, should they, between whether they have a career or they have a family. I've been asked in interviews, so who's looking after your children during the school holidays? My husband's never been asked that question. I met with our new federal MP just recently, and she told me that she was abused on the street when she was campaigning because someone said, you know, you should be focusing on your children, not how are you going to do that when you're running for a position in the federal government. It's just crazy. Those sort of attitudes, fortunately, are starting to die out, but there are still some vocal ones. I think that that really speaks to the reason that we need a national plan. We need it to start at the top, because if our politicians, our governments, our business leaders believe in the importance of gender equality, not just as the right thing to do for humankind, but as something that is going to have an economic benefit for all of us, then that will help to address some of those social prejudices that unfortunately are still there.
Okay, finally, who and why should someone read your book, and basically what can they get out of it?
Look, I've written this book for business leaders, for our politicians, who are the ones that make the decisions, not just women. I've been to too many meetings where women sit around the table, we have a panel of women on the stage, and we all know this. We share these experiences, but we need to have everybody in the room to believe in the importance of equality, as I said, not just as the right thing to do, but as something that's going to advance our economy and make us all successful. So I hope that people will take this book so that they can get a really accurate, factual picture of what the circumstances really are, rather than those myths that keep getting perpetuated, like it'll just take time. You know, it's going to take more than 200 years at the rate we're going. And that's just not good enough. It's just not good enough. The fact that we've stagnated at 6% of our country's CEOs, of our top companies being women, it's just not good enough, especially when we spend so much time, money, and educating our girls and our women. So I really hope that not only will they get the facts straight, but also see that there is something that we can do, as a nation, as a business, and that it's really important that we invest in this now, because we can't afford not to. As we recover from the pandemic, now more than ever before, do we need to ensure that our nation is sustainable economically, and that everyone can flourish and succeed in life. It's good for all of us.
Okay, great. So that is all the time that we have for today. We have just been speaking with Dr. Kathryn Evans, the author of Advanced Australia Fairly. Thank you so much, Kathryn, for speaking with us today.
Thank you, June. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Awesome. So the pleasure is all ours, actually. To our listeners out there, we have a special, thank you for listening throughout the podcast. We have a special giveaway for you. It's the book itself. I hope you can see it. So I have it here, and it's signed. It's signed. Yep, it's signed. So if any one of you would like a copy of this book, please send us your name and your address to editor@dailystraits.com, and we'll send it to all our Australian readers especially. So we'll send it out to you as soon as we get the info. Thank you so much, and have a nice day. Thank you.
That's wonderful, June. And if anyone wants a copy and has missed out on the competition, please go to my website, kathrynjevans.com.au, and you can find out how to purchase a copy there. Thank you.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.